one of my encounters with Miles was when I was with Taj Mahal. And we opened for Miles, which was unusual because usually in a given concert situation, Miles wants to go on first so he can go home and not have to be there and hear the other band's bullshit, was his way of putting it. And I talked to him before we played, and he said, "Yeah, I've heard good things about Taj Mahal, but he's like an old Delta man, but he's young." I said, "Yeah, he's even younger than I am." He said that he had talked to Isaac Hayes about Taj, and Isaac had come to one of our shows at the Fillmore. I remember seeing him there. He said at first he just sat on the stage with the guitar and played some Lightning Hopkins kind of old bullshit. Now, this is not any... Lightning Hopkins is nobody's bullshit. Isaac Hayes hadn't been that long from being behind the plow himself, He didn't like to be reminded of those days. And Lightning Hopkins and John Lee Hooker reminded him of those plowing days, So he didn't care for that part of Taj Mahal. But then when us tuba players came out, us horn players, who all happened to play tuba, and did some different material with Taj, he liked that, and he told Miles to be on the lookout for that. Tony was gone by then. This was 1971. And Jack was in the band, and both Keith and Chick, Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea were both there. And I actually talked to Miles about being in the band, and he laughed. He said, "I don't think you want to play this, And afterwards, so he said, "You still want to be in the band?" I said, "No, the shit is too sad. I mean, all those guys can play so well, and they were all sublimating or something, just to play what you wanted to hear." Well, at Miles's funeral, people who went to Miles's funeral, Jack and Lydia and some other people I know, said that all during the funeral, there was this video loop playing in the cathedral, and that in this part of this video, I was laughing and joking with Miles, and I said, "What? I don't even like Miles. Why would I be laughing and joking with him?" And they said, "No, you were there." I said, "It must have been somebody else." They were, Jack obviously knows what I look like. And I just couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Then I realized that the place where we were rehearsing in 1991, just a few months before he died, the place where we were rehearsing had cameras set up that were remotely controlled. So there was no cameraman, and there was no sense that any video was being taken. But they had the guys in the booth. When Miles was in that room talking to Grady Tate, they had the camera on him, but no sound. Because while Miles was talking to Grady, I went over, because I hadn't spoken to Miles. We had worked the night before, but I hadn't said anything to Miles. So I came over to him and said, "Yeah, I just wanted to come and say hello because I didn't get a chance to speak to you last night. I didn't want you to feel offended or slighted." I said, I didn't want you to feel slighted. As if he would give a damn whether I spoke to him ever or not. And he said, "Slighted? Man, fuck you." And Grady Tate and I started cracking up laughing. And he realized he'd been had, and he laughed a little bit too. He said, "Johnson, you gotta stop that shit." Well, I don't think he cared so much about the youth, but he cared a lot about being a star and making more money. I mean, never say, I guess, that was his motivation. But you know, there's a thing that there's a road to cross over into that where you will validate everything in that world with some other people too who came from the jazz thing and crossed over. It really is a crossing over because I remember one guy who did it successfully, whose work I still liked all the time, whose actual work I still liked, but he was extolling the virtues of all kinds of punk bands that were the punk of the month, you know, that the society was shuffling through on a regular basis. Well, okay, maybe everybody doesn't have to get as well prepared as you and I did to have something to say. And he said, well, you're still saying it ain't shit. I said, it ain't shit. I mean, it's just stuff put together because they know what they'll get out of it. If they had exactly the same thing to say and no opportunity to say it, they probably wouldn't be doing it at all. He got a big response for playing that Gil Evans stuff. And he didn't expect that because that first night before we'd even played anything, Miles, I overheard Miles saying, I don't know why I let Quincy talk me into this stuff. You know, he says, I'm an explorer. Explorer has to go forward. I can't go back. And as a result, he didn't prepare for the gig. The music was sent to him by Gil Goldstein in March, and he hadn't really cracked it. He brought the parts with him, but he hadn't cracked it, and he hadn't listened to that stuff for 40 years because he didn't listen to his records. He said that would be going back. I remember how it felt, and I approved of having it put out, but he didn't really listen to it after that. As a result, when it came to playing, right, he struggled with it. Wow. Now there were about 8 trumpet players in the band. They all knew that lick. They all knew the music. Miles didn't know it. He was mostly sight reading and the least prepared person on that stage. I always kind of resented that. You know, there were some things that he got a whole bar ahead on one thing. I think it might have been Maids of Cadiz or something like that. But you can see on the video, you can see Wallace pointing to the right bar. One way and another, he makes the notes that he is playing work for the harmony that's behind it. It doesn't sound terribly crippled, but he's definitely in the wrong place. And after that second rehearsal, he sat there kind of stunned, you know. He said, no one will ever write like this again. This is amazing. Well, yeah, it's amazing to you. You haven't heard this shit, you know. You know, it's something we've been living with for 40 years. Well, it's hard to say, you know, doing that stuff with Quincy, if not softened, unhardened his heart a little bit. And Bill Evans, you know, the saxophone player, said that he called tunes from the 60s on their next gig. He was playing with him in Paris and a few other gigs. The day after he did the Miles thing. And of course, Bill knew all that stuff. Everybody in the band knew those things, but he called, I don't know, something really weird like Bye Bye Blackbird or something. I don't know exactly what he did, but it scared the shit out of everybody. Who knows where his heart might have gone with all that. But, you know, if I'm coming down on him for not knowing Gil's music, because, see, that's what was important to me, Gil's stuff, right? I figured he'd at least give it what it deserved from him, and he didn't, because he didn't listen to anything. So people would say, Jonathan, you're kind of hard on him. The guy was about to die. I said, well, he didn't know that. trying to find a new place in it for myself because I have this huge reputation and people don't know how I play. They don't. So I'm trying to build my way into it myself, so I can do some things of my own. It's working on some levels. I do a lot of university stuff. They like that, instead of the guest from New York or wherever being the same trumpet or saxophone player. I'm the baritone sax player and tuba player. Jake Feinberg. He put out something that I said about finding a path to art, getting off the path that everybody else is on and finding out that there is something else, Everybody is weighing in on it. What I was basically saying is that when you get up and go out, you're not going to trip over art. You're not going to trip over jazz. You're not going to trip over classical music. Our lives are set up to steer us away from that sort of thing. So we have to make the decision. We're going to go and find out anyway. We're going to go and find out what an opera is like and what a woodwind quintet is and what straight-ahead jazz is and what avant-garde jazz is and listen to it all, hate what you hate and love what you love and support it. Because you don't know. It's not the stuff they're trying to cram down your throat. And you can find it in almost anything, it's out there. There are people being original and trying to say something to you, trying to reach you. And you won't even know it if you take the path of, following the person who takes over the social media and establish themselves with a couple of homemade vids, Well, if it's got a goal like that, fine. But if that causes people to stop searching, stop looking for more, they're not going to get any more. And you might end up, in that process, you might end up loving Justin Bieber as far as I'm concerned. But you'll know it's your thing because you chose it. You picked it yourself.